Hi and welcome to another part of the JavaScript tutorials about DOM, and in this part we're going to cover some of the topics about CSS, events, and event listeners in JavaScript and DOM. So let me create another file right over here. So I'm gonna do this using the terminal, touch index2.html, and then it will be created right afterwards. Notice that you can do this manually, but I'm easier on the terminal, so let me open the file, and right over here I'm going to open up the index2.html. So let us copy and paste whatever we've got inside of the image.html, and let's remove the extra codes inside of the JavaScript scripts and also this image tag. So what I'm gonna do is, first of all, I'm going to add a div tag. So let's add a div tag and give it an ID. So I'm gonna give this ID and name it my ID. And then what I'm gonna do is to close the div tag, and for example here write hello world and exclamation mark. So right over here instead of our scripts, notice that using DOM we can also change the style of a text or style of a tag inside of our HTML code. Although we can do it inside of the HTML code or inside another extra code file, we can do it right over here instead of the JavaScript. And the reason we do this is some of the events that we might face, and we might need to change the style of the code using JavaScript. So it makes the file more dynamic when we use it instead of the JavaScript DOM. So the way we do this is with this famous document.getElementsById, document.getElementsById, and then here I'm going to write the ID of my tag. And so here instead of inner HTML I'm going to use style, and style that here we can add the properties of our CSS code. So we've got a lot of properties, as you can see. Any CSS property that you want to add, whether it's a border or whether it's padding, width, height, or color. So the first thing I'm going to add here is the color of the text. So I'm gonna set this to blue, and here we go. And there's another one that I'm going to add right over here, which is also, let us change the color of the background color of the div tag. So let's see how we can find this. So if you do not exactly remember what the property is, you can find it by the auto completion of the VS Code. So here I can find the background, and then here we've got a lot of background properties, right? Such as position on the x-axis, y-axis, position, origin, image, color. So here we need the color. So let's make this equal to red, and then the semicolon. And so let me paste another one, and here we're going to, so first of all let me comment this one, and let us run this with live server. I'm gonna save this, and here open it up with the live server, and as you can see we've got the div tag. It has a background color red, and the text is blue. So this is not bad, but up to now we've just managed the color. Let us also add the padding and width and height. So for the width here I'm going to add value, so for example 120 pixels, and then for the height I can here use 80 pixels, and so also for the padding let me use 20 pixels. So we're gonna test this and see if it's appropriate. So not bad, but let's change the padding to 40 and save this better. So we can also change the font of the text. So let me paste this and see if we've got that property. Of course we've got, but we can also check that to make sure. Now let's paste in the kind of font that we want, and here let me save the code. And as you can see, the font has changed in style, so let me make it 32 pixels and save this. As you can see, it's got bigger, so we can apply any kind of CSS style that we want inside of our JavaScript code using DOM. And you can add any number of style that you want. So that's it for these styles. Now we're going to head over to the events. So the simplest kind of event that we learned in the previous season of JavaScript was the onClick event. So here I'm going to add that in order to test it right over here. So we're going to, for example, if we click on this hello world, something else will be shown to us. So in order to do that, we can write it right over here instead of the HTML code without using JavaScript, but actually instead of it, we're using JavaScript. So instead of the onClick, we can write this, which is referring to the div tag, and then .inner HTML. And here you can write, make it equal to something, for example, after hello world, we say welcome. And so that's it. I think that there is something wrong over here. Let me fix it. So let me save this and click on this. So it seems something's wrong. So we've got the onClick and this .inner HTML, which is equals to, okay, we've got to make this instead of the apostrophe, and save the code. So let's click on this. As you can see, welcome appears after clicking on the hello world. If I refresh the page and click on this, you will see that welcome appears once more. So that's the simplest kind of event that we can add, but that's not that doesn't end there. We can also add other kinds of stuff right over here. So for example, you click on the onClick, and instead of this .inner HTML, we add some kind of function that is written inside of these scripts. So here imagine that we have some other kind of event, so that instead of clicking on this button, you will be able to see that once you move your cursor right over here, you will be able to see that something else appears. And once you move your mouse over from this div tag, you will be able to see that hello world appears again. So in order to do that, first of all, let's change this onClick, and instead of this, I'm going to add some other event. So it's from here up to here, and we shouldn't have deleted the ID. So up to here it's fine. So right now what I'm going to do is to add another event. So on mouse over, and make this equal to, so I'm going to, for example, define some kind of function, so it should be written inside of the quotation mark. So for example here, for example, mouse over function, and then it should get an input, and the input is the div tag itself, which we should refer to, and instead of this we should write this. This refers to div tag. Also, we're going to add another event, so you can add as many events as you want right over here. So here I'm going to also add on mouse out. So on mouse out is for example, changing the position of the cursor to somewhere outside of the div tag. So for this one, I'm going to define a function mouse out, and then the input is again this. So let's check if everything's fine. So I guess that's fine, but let us make sure on mouse over equals to we have this quotation mark, and then on mouse out, this one should change. Now it's fine. Okay, now let me also make this a bit bigger so that you can better see what we've got inside of the code. So the next step is to write our function. Now after our styles, we're going to write the kind of functions that we have mentioned, and we're going to define right over here. So function, and then one of our functions were mouseover, and then we should okay, first of all we should, so we've got this as an object, so object is going to object, or any other kind of variable will be the input. So here we can say obj dot inner HTML equals to welcome. So instead of hello world, it will show us welcome. And then we've got another function for mouse out, which is going to again show us the hello world, right? So mouse out right over here, we've got the object as the input, and then we've got the bracket. So obj dot inner HTML equals to hello world another time. So now it's time to try this, and so let me first of all save the code and make it smaller again. Now as you can see, once we move our mouse over to this div tag, you'll see that it says welcome, and once you get out, you will see that it's again hello world, welcome, hello world. Also, it's more beautiful to add exclamation mark right over here and save this. So this is event. Event is any kind of event that happens, any kind of action that the user does, whether it's a mouse click or a button on the keyboard, or whether it's a moving of the cursor or moving over to a tag, whether it's a div tag or a head tag or whatever it is. So event is being able to capture that kind of event and create a kind of a reaction, such as changing the text or a kind of function. So generally that's what we do instead of the events. And so here we're going to also talk about the events listeners, but we'd rather cover it in the next part because the time is over for this video. And so in the next part we're going to cover all about the add event listeners.